Hello and welcome to another episode of the Company We Keep podcast. I am your host, Jason Pearl. Excited for you to be with us again today. This podcast is for everyday business owners, entrepreneurs, and leaders that want to think differently about growth and success and want to achieve better balance in both business and life. Today, we have a guest that checks all of those boxes. Eric Hepkins is the Chief Executive Officer of Cornerstone Federal Credit Union. He is a six-time triathlete Ironman finisher. So let that sit with you for a minute. He has completed 6 Ironmans, and he is the father of 5 young children from the ages of 7 to 11 months old. He is a really impressive guy, has got lots of insight to share with you, and I'm really excited for you to learn about Eric. So without further ado, Eric Hepkins. All right. I am here with a special guest today, friend and former colleague of mine, Eric Hepkins. Eric is a dynamic leader that I'm really excited for all of you to learn about. Eric has worked for some international banks. He's held some awesome leadership positions with some local and some international banks, and we're going to talk about all those things today. But before we get into that, let me break down a little bio of Eric, who Eric is and what he is all about. When I do this, you're likely going to say, where does this guy have all the time? But without further ado, here it is. So Eric is a devoted husband to his wife, Lizzie, and he is the father to 5 children. And not just 5 children, 5 from the ages of 7 to 11 months. So he's a super busy guy. He's also currently the Chief Executive Officer of Cornerstone Federal Credit Union, which is a really large credit union here in the local area that I reside in, Lockport, New York. And his credit union has over $500 million of assets, and he's in charge of over 120 employees. He's had a decorated career in banking, as I mentioned, with HSBC, Evans Bank, and now with Cornerstone. And one of the most impressive things is Eric is also a triathlete and has competed and completed 6 Ironmans. So if you were feeling inadequate before, here we go. Eric Hepkins, everybody. Good morning. How are you today, Eric?
Great. Thanks for that introduction. I think it's
Yeah, absolutely. Ironmans. I mean, that's got to be crazy. I had another question I wanted to start off with, but let's talk a little bit about that. So 6 Ironmans you completed. Can you tell the audience what an Ironman actually is?
I mean, just the technical aspect of it. It's a swim, bike, and then run. It's a 2.4 mile swim, 112 mile bike, and then a marathon, 26.2 miles. In a continuous format. So I mean, for me, those who have done Ironmans will be unimpressed by this, but it took me about 13 hours. And typically, if you haven't done an Ironman, you hear that number and you're like, oh wow, 13 hours. But then some people are like, man, you're slow.
Man, that is impressive. Where did you compete in the Ironmans?
I did Lake Placid 6 times. So, they have them around the country, around the world. Logistically, that was the easiest one for me to get to when I did my first one, but also I just love that area. I love the Adirondacks. And that's where I actually made the decision to do Ironman originally. So it just has sort of a special spot in my heart. I was actually there watching one, and the day after the race is over, they do a highlight reel, and I was watching the highlight reel that they put together. I mean, they produce it exceptionally fast. Obviously, it's the next morning, and it was between the swim. It was when people were transitioning from the swim to the bike, and they're in that like a changing tent, and this elderly gentleman, I think he is changing into his bike clothes, and they look over at him and they say, "How you doing?" And he looks up and he goes, 63 years old, triple bypass surgery last year, just finished the swim and I feel great. And wow. Or 60 something. And I just looked at that and I said, I got to do that, and I just thought, what am I doing? I'm blessed with this body, healthy. I'm a healthy individual. Why am I just wasting? I immediately felt like I was wasting myself. And so I said, I got it. It was just like, I didn't even know how to swim, to be honest with you. I
Wow.
went to the pool after that summer. I went to the pool the first time, and I couldn't make it across. I couldn't make it across the pool.
Wow.
So I was in the 4-foot pool because I didn't want to drown. And like halfway through, I had to stand up. I couldn't breathe, and so it was a journey. But that's why I love Lake Placid, and I love the Ironman.
Well, that is such a cool story. So thanks for sharing that. And obviously this podcast is the Company We Keep podcast. I wanted to kind of introduce how you and I got to know each other. So back in 2000, late 2010, early 2011, I was transitioning from a career at Wells Fargo, which is another large bank that I spent the first 10 years of my career at. And after Wells Fargo bought Wachovia, the position that I was in Northern New Jersey was eliminated, and I was going to have to move for the 7th time in 11 years, and just decided to take a buyout and move back to my hometown and kind of change my career. So HSBC was gracious enough to hire me. Mutual friend of ours, Scott Wallace, reached out to me and said, "Hey, heard you're on the market, would love to create a position for you." So he did. And that's how I got to meet you. You were in a leadership position, running a territory in a sales management type of role. You were super intimidating, probably because you were just like cut differently. I was like, this guy's got it all together. He's super cut, but you were always really gracious and did a nice job. And so that's how we initially started to get to know each other. Didn't know each other very well. And then last year during COVID, we kind of reconnected. Little known fact, you're also the brother-in-law of season 2, episode 1's guest, Michael McGreevy. So you are part of this like crazy impressive McGreevy family tree. So that's kind of how we're all interconnected. So if you surround yourself with the right people, you find people like Eric Hepkins that'll join your podcast. It's great to have you on. You've held a number of different leadership positions. So you have a decorated career. You've held a lot of large retail management leadership positions within a few different banks. And now you're the top executive at Cornerstone Federal Credit Union. When you're introduced that way, or people say that to you, or say you're the chief executive officer, does that make you feel any different, or how does that make you feel when you're the number one executive there?
It was an incredible honor, and it's an incredible responsibility. And to have the honor of leading 120 people in my case, and just being there to support them, being there to support and nurture this team. And that's my role. My role is to help people to get to places that they wouldn't go on their own. I don't open accounts. I don't underwrite loans. I'm just there to be a support system to an incredible team. That's when you really feel the pressure. When you have to be responsible to truly help people, to guide people, to lift them up when they're feeling down. I mean, there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of stress. People are the best part of my day, but they also can be the most complicated part of the day as well. It weighs heavy on me if I feel like I'm not helping someone enough, or something pushing down on the culture. That's what I take, the greatest pride and ownership of.
So one of the interesting things is knowing your background, coming from HSBC, which is an international bank. It's not an American bank, right? It's an international bank. Having a transition from that, I know you had 2 different stops with HSBC in your career. What was it like going from HSBC to then working through an opportunity as you're going through an interview process to say like, okay, I'm going to leave potentially this opportunity that I have at HSBC and move to a more regionalized or localized credit union? How did that thought process work through for you?
Well, I did that twice. But I've always been like sort of that, I want to be that master of my own destiny. I didn't want to be told what position I was going to be mapping into in a new organization. So I went from this, big, international bank to a, comparatively smallish community bank. It was a big shock going from such a large organization to a small organization. Lots of lessons to learn along the way. And then I got recruited back to HSBC at some point a few years later. And when I went back, it was different. Now I was in a national role. I was the U.S. head of whatever, and I was doing a lot of international travel now, India, UK. It was a great experience. But what I realized through that experience was I was really driven through the local community ties and really more the people management, because now I was in a role that I was doing more initiatives and project-based kinds of things, and less people leading. I really started searching, within myself, and I started looking around as well. And it was an answer to prayer. It was. I feel like I'm supposed to be here. And then when I got the call that it was me, I almost hit the floor, and it was just such a great feeling. But it was validation. It was like that from the moment that I saw the opportunity, it just clicked. There was something there that said, do it.
I think what's really interesting about that, Eric, is that we talk a lot on this podcast about defining your success. Like, you as an individual need to figure out what you think success is. And I certainly know that there are a lot of people that'd be like, wait a minute. It seems pretty sexy to be traveling to the UK and to India and repping one of the largest well-known international banks in the world and being able to say like, hey, I'm traveling and doing all these things. But as you were going through this process, you had children, you were married, you're traveling, and success to you, that what it sounds like what you found out was that it was about serving the local community, being a part of something that was tangible, that you could help and you could serve these people with the talents that you have.
Being true to myself, using my gifts above, anything else.
Yeah.
And I think if you do that, everything kind of works out.
In kind of a follow-up question to that is, as you've had these different positions, international bank, localized bank, international bank again, and then onto a community credit union, how has that affected your leadership style over the course of the past, decade and a half?
I don't know how unique my experience is, going kind of, back and forth twice between a large and small types of organizations, but I've had the opportunity to see and learn from some really, really tremendous leaders. I mean, yourself included. I mean, that's how we met. You really have opportunities to learn from some really great people. And I've learned good from good, and I've learned from bad. I've learned what not to do, and I've learned what to do.
Yeah. And honestly, it's what I think is really important for other people. Because again, this is a podcast for business owners, entrepreneurs, and leaders, right? You're the chief executive officer with a lot of responsibility. And if leaders surround themselves with the right people, what happens is people like you step up and say, go do what you have to do. Now, so as we continue to kind of transition in this line of questioning, we talk a lot about balance. So when we talk about balance, we talk about family. Again, you have this important role at this credit union. You have 120 people that look to you for leadership. But most importantly, you've got a wife and 5 children that look to you for leadership, right? How do you find the time of the day? How do you balance? What boundaries do you use to still be able to succeed as a husband and a father and succeed as a chief executive officer of a large credit union?
I think I'm probably learning that on a daily basis. I mean, I don't know if there's a good answer for that. All I can say is my family's the number one priority, and fortunately, I'm able to fit in more priorities after that. I mean, because I have a very supportive wife. I have the time that I need. If I need to go to an event after work, that support is there. I've never been made to feel like you can't do that, or why aren't you home for that? But on the flip side, I also try not to abuse that. What I try to do is create a human environment here where there are not these unrealistic expectations on people. And I think that helps, that we're not expected to be here to all hours of the night just to show that you're burning the midnight oil. I think you can find the balance if you're with the right organization that has that sort of a mentality. So one, you got to stop worrying about taking the credit. It's not about you. It's about those around you. But if you just say, I'm not going to play that game, then the balance becomes a lot more possible.
One of the reasons that I decided to do this podcast, and another reason I like to bring on people like you, is that this world needs to hear that leadership and success is not about climbing to the top of the mountain by yourself. It's about serving people. And if you lead the right way, whether you're in a manufacturing company, whether you're in a bank, or whether you're making widgets, if you serve the people that work with you the right way, you're going to enjoy what you do. You're going to get the most out of individuals, and you're going to be able to enjoy both the business and the personal sides of whatever it is your life is. And That's the type of message that I think needs to continually be put out there, because it's so important for the young people coming out of school, trying to figure out what they want to do with their life, and realize that if you just individually do what you think you're gifted in, and you do it with the right heart, and you serve the people the right way, you will find success. As we continue down this path of questioning, one of the questions I love to ask my guests is, who is the company you keep, and what fills your cup on a daily basis to be able to pour out the way you do?
Well, I mean, largely the company I keep these days is my family. Michael, as you've referenced, is my brother-in-law. He's an incredible individual. And if I don't admit how much I've learned from him along the way, my father-in-law as well, just amazing individual. He's done some really cool things after his retirement. Started a company called Brewdad, and he's been trying to educate teachers and school facilitators on how to build good culture there. My father, I learned it all from my father. Integrity is number one. He always put the family in front of himself. And then individuals like you. I mean, having reconnected was, not by accident. I think as bad as COVID was, there's a lot of silver linings that have come out of it. And I have a few, other close friends, but it's a small circle, because I just unfortunately don't have a ton of time. I don't remember the last, well, not because of COVID, but I don't remember the last happy hour I've been to, so.
Happy hour is normally trying to get dinner at the table at the same time, right? Yeah, that's when everyone's happy.
We're happy that hour if dinner's done.
Dinner's right. Oh, that's funny. So true. So true. So what we'll do is we're going to transition to a couple fun questions. So as you talk about having 5 children and, and what the chaos and amazing nature of what that would be like is, any funny fatherhood events that you've gone through that you think's worth sharing with the group?
Oh, okay. One just popped into my mind immediately.
Okay.
So I'm actually walking in to my ALCO meeting. It's a monthly meeting for non-bankers, asset liability committee. It's basically, you sit down. It's one of the most important functions in a financial institution. You're talking through the balance sheet. I won't get into more of that, but I get a call from my wife as I'm walking in, and she said, Ethan's not here. That's my son. He's my 6-year-old.
Okay.
And I said, what do you mean he's not there? My sister-in-law comes over every other Thursday, and she goes to her house on the other Thursday. And they spend the day together. She's got 2 kids. We have 5, and they're about the same ages, so they play. Well, Ethan decided he wanted to go back to their house with them. So he hid in the back of their SUV as a stowaway. And I'm actually impressed, because as a 6-year-old, he was able to sneak into this car, hide in the back, behind the back seat, and be quiet enough, for a half hour. And Lizzie's looking everywhere for him. Can't find him. So she calls her sister, Sarah, and she said, is there any chance Ethan's with you? And Sarah's like, no. And she goes, and she calls back, girls, is Ethan in the car? And one of the girls goes, and they're like, no. And then one of the girls goes, yes, he's in the car. And then he pops up, and she's already back in Buffalo.
Right. Wow.
And I'm like, so she was obviously shaken up because of the whole ordeal, not knowing where he was. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. So I had to walk into my ALCO meeting and say, guys, I'm sorry, I gotta go pick up my son in Buffalo. He's just stowed away in a car.
You can't make that up. You cannot make that story up.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
That is a great story. To your point, impressive for the 6-year-old to think about that and to be that quiet. But as a parent, you're losing your mind, right? Because the safety, he's not buckled up, right? Like he's in the back stowaway.
I don't even know he's in there. What if she stopped it? Don't even get me started, but
Yeah, well, if you ever fly anywhere as a family, like you need to get one of those backpacks, that has like the leash on it. So he's not trying to
to be home alone.
To Hawaii.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, that's funny. Oh, wow. That is a great story. Another fun question is, so we always have some type of musical question. So with 5 kids, this may be hard to answer, or maybe it's going to be easy to answer, but what's the last album you downloaded or bought, or what was the last live show you went to?
Well, my last download was just a song. It was On the Road Again. I think that's Willie Nelson.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Because what I did was we have a UTV side by side kind of thing. We all got in it, and we were driving through the woods, and I had my camera mounted on the dashboard, and I had us all like going through the trail like this. And I took like a 30-second snippet of that video and set it to on the road again and shared that to the family. I thought it looked hilarious. So that was actually my last download.
All right. Very cool. You got to love Willie Nelson. That's for sure. That's for sure. Now, knowing that you're a triathlete, this may be a difficult question because, who knows what type of guilty pleasure you have because you probably eat clean and do all those great things. But is there any type of guilty pleasure you have, whether it be TV show or food or anything like that?
Well, food-wise, it's got to be Kettle brand salt and vinegar potato chips. I just love them.
I knew we were kindred spirits, man. I am a salt and vinegar freak. I love it. I actually like it so much that I give it up for months of time because I would eat a whole bag. Yeah. I love them.
Yeah. I count that as my one splurge when it comes to eating.
Yeah, I love it. That's a good choice. That's a good choice. So as we get ready to kind of close up, anything you want to ask me or anything you want to share with the audience that we haven't talked about?
I'll put in a quick selfless plug for Cornerstone.
Sure.
We are not for profit. If people don't know what credit unions are, I just ask that they take a look and check them out. Everyone should have a relationship with any credit union. Not mine, just our credit union, because we are a not-for-profit, 100% member-owned co-op. If you've ever belonged to a co-op, like a farmers market co-op, or that's what it is. It's just a bunch of people that own it and that use it, and we don't make profit for shareholders. We don't have quarterly earnings estimates to hit. We can make decisions for the community, the right decisions for the community, and we don't have to put profit as our motivation. We're not subsidized by the government, so we have to run a strong business. But if we make too much money, we don't keep it. We give it back to our members. So you find that we try to have better rates, but it's not just about the rates. It's about the advice that you're going to be getting from our people, or the products that you're going to be getting from our people, or the products that we develop are made for the member and the community, number one. We just need to make one more dollar than it costs to run the place. Yeah. And that's it. And that's how every credit union operates.
And knowing you as a leader and other leaders in the credit union world, it is a really important point. It doesn't mean that banks are bad, but it just means that credit unions have a very different business model. And it's serving the community, as we talked about. So that's such a good plug. And if you guys pull that from this podcast, and that's the only thing you pull, it's a great thing. Support your local credit union because they're there to support you. So, well, Eric, I have had a blast chatting with you. It's been great, introducing you to the audience and letting them know about what true leadership looks like, which is what you're seeing here on the screen in Eric Hepkins. So I just appreciate who you are. I appreciate your time and what you're doing to serve the community that I live in. So thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to getting together in person soon.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, you got it, Eric. Thanks. Hey, everyone. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Company We Keep podcast. Hope you enjoyed learning from and listening to Eric Hepkins as much as I did. It was great to have him on and great to catch up with him. If you're enjoying this podcast and you want to keep the conversation going, I'd implore you to visit my website, jasonmpearl.com, for all sorts of ways to interact with me and keep the conversation going. Till next time, I'm Jason Pearl. I'm out. See ya.